Get 3 months of local news for just 99 cents a month. You'll get unlimited access to the news you need to stay engaged and connected to your community. Visit inforum.com/subscribe now to get 3 months of local news for only 99 cents a month.
Meet the North Dakota duck hunting doctor who made house calls and did your farm chores. Hi, this is Tracy Briggs, and welcome to Back Then. Well, he could have practiced medicine just about anywhere. That's what happens when you graduate at the top of your class at Northwestern Medical School. But Simon Doc Melzer wasn't meant to work for hospitals in New York or L.A., much to the chagrin of North Dakota's duck population. Throughout most of the 20th century, Dr. Simon Wenzel Melzer, Doc to his friends, was a most beloved doctor in Woodworth, North Dakota, a tiny town in Stutsman County. A true Northland country doctor, he traveled through blizzards on horseback and sleigh to help his patients deliver babies or fight diseases like the Spanish flu or typhoid fever. And he did so for more than half a century. He could have taken his considerable skills and practiced anywhere. He certainly would have made more money and had an easier life. So why endure the hardships of country doctoring? Oh yeah, it's those ducks. Doc Melzer had a passion for duck hunting equal to his love of medicine. This time of year, when he wasn't treating patients, he'd be out looking for his favorite species, the canvasback. His love of duck hunting was so well known, he was profiled in an issue of North Dakota Outdoors magazine shortly before his death in 1983. The magazine has given the form permission to reprint its photos. Simon Melzer was born in Mayville, Wisconsin in 1886, and almost from the start found it was duck hunting that made him happy. When he was 14, he and his friends hiked for miles to reach the marsh where they could hunt. After high school graduation, he started to save for medical school by working as a pusher or a guide for 2 wealthy duck hunting clubs. He made a whopping $2 a week plus room and board. In a 1978 story in North Dakota Outdoors, writer Ted Upgren described Melzer's job responsibilities as pushing millionaire duck hunters through the marsh in duck boats, setting decoys, and retrieving birds. He added to his income by trapping mink, raccoons, and muskrats. It must have been enough income to at least pay part of his tuition at Northwestern Medical School, where studies kept him busy enough that hunting had to take a back seat. An 18-month internship in the heart of Chicago also made it difficult to pursue his passion for hunting. Perhaps that passion was directed elsewhere, as he met his future wife, Beatrice McDonald, a nurse, during that time in Chicago. They married on New Year's Eve, 1911. A job soon followed in the heavily Scandinavian town of Kensington, Minnesota. According to Upgren, it proved difficult for the solid German Melzer to communicate. Fortunately, a friend tipped him off to an opportunity that seemed to be a much better fit. The tiny North Dakota town of Woodworth had been founded just 4 years earlier in 1911, when the Northern Pacific Railroad came through Stutsman County. By the time Melzer visited after hearing of an opening for a town doctor, the town had grown to 450 people. This is what Melzer told North Dakota Outdoors about those early days. Oh, the town was a boomer. 2 banks, 2 liveries, 2 of everything, and 6 or 7 groceries. He saw possibilities here. He loved the people and the countryside. He told the magazine, "They didn't have a doctor, and it was good duck hunting country. I liked what I saw. You bet." Almost immediately, his practice started to grow, but so did the pressure. Shortly after arriving, the world was gripped by the Spanish flu pandemic, and Woodworth wouldn't escape it. Melzer worked day and night caring for the sick. In one case, he treated 11 members of one family. Often, after his house calls, he'd step outside and feed livestock or do farm chores for patients who had no one else to help while they were sick. Fortunately, Melzer never caught the Spanish flu, but he wasn't as lucky in 1936 when he came down with typhoid fever. Here's what he told North Dakota Outdoors. I had a bunch of typhoid in here, and the state came up here, but they couldn't find out where it had come from. I had 4 or 5 cases, and then I got it. I was in the hospital for 7 weeks. Melzer also endured his share of personal hardship. His first wife, Beatrice, died in 1948 at the age of 63. He remarried the next year, 1949, to a woman named Sarah Uggan, but she died 7 years later in 1956 at the age of 68. Melzer dealt with his grief and the pressure of his busy job the only way he knew how, by duck hunting. Everything melted away when he boarded his duck boat with his pal Albert Hansen. Hansen and other friends, and soon his own sons, became his hunting party and helped him relive the joys he first felt hunting with his teenage pals in Wisconsin. According to North Dakota Outdoors, Melzer and his hunting buddies were usually in the marsh well before daylight, with their decoys set out and ready to go. No matter how the team fared, the hunt was over by 1 p.m., just in time for Doc's wife and some other townswomen to put out a picnic lunch for them. Now, being the only doctor in town, occasionally the hunt was interrupted by a medical emergency. Every fall during duck hunting season, at least one person would know exactly which marsh to find Melzer. They'd let him know he needed to stop hunting and care for a patient by waving a white flag or handkerchief on the shore. According to North Dakota Outdoors, Melzer lived at a time when bag limits were mostly academic. No one paid much attention. His crew seldom knowingly exceeded limits, even though by today's standards it might have appeared excessive. In those years, limits of 15 birds per hunter were common and completely legal. His mornings in the marsh nearly always yielded more game than Doc and his family needed, so he would often drop off any extra harvested birds with local farmers. He said, "They were tickled pink to get them. We had all we could eat, and I never threw any game away." Melzer quit hunting in the early 1970s when he was well into his 80s. While he still loved it, new regulations stating that no more canvasbacks could be taken east of U.S. Highway 3 severely limited his hunt. He told Upgren in the North Dakota Outdoors story, "If I could only shoot one more canvasback, I'd still go out. But that's too far away over there west of number 3. I'd have to get up at 2 in the morning to drive there and get set up by sunrise." But after he put down his gun for good, Doc still found the time every fall to go out into the marshes of his home county to just see how the fellas are doing, he said. Simon Wenzel Melzer died in 1983 at 97 years of age. By all accounts, he had an enviable life, caring for people and enjoying his beloved North Dakota prairie, especially in the fall, when the boats floated in the marsh and the canvasbacks flew overhead. And that is back then for this time. I hope you'll join me next time.
From news and local politics to sports and true crime, find your next great listen right now at inforum.com/podcasts. That's inforum.com/podcasts.